All right, so we're just going to jump right in and just get started. How's that? If you have not printed out your Hebrew lesson, it should be sitting in your email, in your inbox. I know it went out because I got one back myself today. So, anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started. So, what's our first word over here? All right, so we have the letter Aleph, silent letter, but it's pointed with talk. So, it's like a short A. And then we have this chet, and it's pointed chetef patak, so shortened or reduced. So we have acha, acha. Then we have a lamed, L sound, and it's pointed patak with a yud behind it. So we're going, that's a diphthong, so we're going to make two sounds into one. So we have la, e, but we're going to pronounce it lai. All right, so we have achlai. Achlai. All right, what's our next word? All right, so we have the letter Yud, Y sound here, and it's pointed kirik, right? But it's also followed by a kaf. And that kaf is dagesh. So since we have a vowel point in front, what are we going to do? We're going to double it, right? So it's like two Ks. So this goes from being yi to yik, right? Then we have the kaf, and it's pointed cholem, right? Ko. Then we have a nun followed by a wa pointed shuruk, nu. All right. So yikonu. So achlai yikonu. All right. What's our next word? All right. So we have a dalet, and it's pointed with vocal shva because we're at a beginning of a word. So de. Then we have the resh, and it's pointed kamatz, ra. Then we have the chaf, and it's pointed kamatz with a yud behind it. So we have this softer K sound, and then we've got this diphthong here as well. I, all right, chai, all right. So derachai. All right, what's our next word here? All right, so we have the lamed, and it's pointed kirik. So short duration I type vowel, li. Then it's being followed by the letter shin, indicators on the right hand side, and it has a silent shva, right? So we close the syllable, leash. Then we have a mem pointed cholem, short, long duration O sound with a resh behind it, m or more. So leash more. All right, and then what about this last word? All right, so we have the chet here, and it's pointed kubutz, so chu. Then we have this kuf, and this kuf is pointed with dagesh. So we're going to do what? We're going to double it, right? So it's like two Qs. So this first syllable goes from being chu to chuk. Then we have the second kaf, and it's pointed segol yod, so K, right? Like Q-E-I-K. And then we have chaf sofit pointed kamatz, cha, so hukecha. Mm-hmm. Hukecha. All right, so we have transliterated our sentence. Let's read it together. So we have Achlai yikonu darachai lishmor chukecha. Now let's do it again. Achlai yikonu darachai lishmor chukecha. All right, what about Achrai. Achalai. What does that mean? Well, so what we're dealing with, this is kind of a silly word. I threw a ringer in here on you guys. So the word achalai is actually it's a exclamation. All right. So it's a combination of two words, right? It's ach, which basically means oh, alas, right? And then lu, which means if I could, or like in the King James where it says would that, like when they said would that we had died in the, you know what I mean? So yeah, it's a very dramatic thing. So what we can say is achlai would be like if only. Okay. So I'm going to write if only, if only something happened, right? It's kind of a plaintive thing. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, if, you know, if only we had died in the land of Egypt. If only we had done this. If, you know what I mean? That kind of a thing. So what about the word yikonu? The word is kun, yes. So we're talking, when we talk about kun, what does that mean? That means to set up, to establish, right? So, no, it's if only. So it's something that has already happened. Okay. Well, it's the yud is being used as a gender here. All right. So, but was is where we're at. Okay. So what we're gonna say, if only was. Now the grammar of this sentence is kind of weird. It's because it's kind of an answer to an earlier line a couple of verses before. All right, it's saying, you know, this is the situation. So if only such and such, then this other thing. All right. If only was established. What about darachai? My way, exactly. My darach, my path, right? My walk, my means of going. All right. So if only was established my way or my path. What about lishmor? To keep. To keep. Okay. Keep, guard, protect, shield. They all work the same. Okay. Lishmor. The lamed is being used as a prefix meaning to. Then we have the root word shamar, which means to keep or to guard. All right. To keep. And then what about hukeka? Okay, the word hook means what? Ordinance, right? So ordinance, the yud is being used as a masculine infix of, and then the cha, you or yours, right? So hukeka, your ordinance, and in this case we could say ordinances. We are sure there's more than one. All right. So this is Psalm 119 and 5. And the psalmist is saying in the King James, oh, that my ways were directed to keep your statutes. Okay. That's what he's saying. if only my path was established, right? If only I was set up, I was directed to follow your statutes, to follow your ordinances or your way. But again, remember, this is kind of as again, it's more of a plaintive kind of cry. Hey, if I had been set up to do this better, he's not blaming anybody but himself. But what he's saying is, it'd be so much easier if I didn't have a choice to make. If I just did this thing. That's kind of like what we talked about earlier in the Parsha, where we were talking about it's better to do the right thing first, right? Than to have to go back and fix it. So, anyway, this is what he's saying. If only my path was established to keep your ordinances, then so on and so forth. But anyway, like I said, that is Proverbs 119 or Psalms, Psalms 119 and 5. That's good. We want to make sure that food must be good. All right, so let's go to our second sentence here. All right, so what's our first word? All right, so we have the letter bait, and it's pointed patak, short duration A, so ba. Then we have ayin, silent letter, but it's pointed how? Chatef patak, right? Ah, so ba. What's this letter? The tzadi, and it's pointed kamatz, long duration A type vowel, right? Tza. So since this is a long duration vowel point, we have a tav with a shva. The shva is vocal because we're following the long duration. Te, and then chaf sofit pointed kamatz cha. So we have ba'atzatecha. Right? Ba'atzatecha. 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 All right, what about our next word? All right, so we have a tav, and it's pointed patach, so that gives us the sound ta. But then we have the letter nun, and how's it pointed? Silent shva. So tan, close the syllable. We have the letter het, and it's pointed how? Sere, long duration E type vowel. So che, tan, che. And then we have nun pointed kirikyod, ni. So tancheni. What about the next word here? All right, so we have the wa, and it's pointed with vocal shva. So the vocal shva is giving us our vowel sound. So we have to have a consonant sound, right? So it's going to be the, right? The. Then we have aleph, silent but pointed with patach. Ah. Then we have chet, pointed with patach, and then resh behind it. Char. So we have va'achar, va'achar, va'achar. All right, ba'atzatecha, tancheni, va'achar. All right, what's our next word here? All right, so we have the kaf, pointed kamatz, ka. Then we have a veit, pointed cholem wa with dalet, v'od, kavod. Kavod. All right, what about our last word here? All right, so we have the tav here, pointed with kirik, T. And we have the kuf, and it's got what inside? Dagesh. So we're going to double it, right? So the T becomes tik. Then we pick up the second Q and the A, ka. So tika. Then we have a chet, and it's pointed how? Sere. So che. Then nun, pointed kirik yod, ni. All right, so we have tikacheni. Remember that mateg is there, so we need to stress there. All right, tikacheni. Tikacheni. All right, so we have transliterated it. Let's read it together. Ba'atzatecha tancheni v'achar kavod tikacheni. Let's do it again. Ba'atzatecha tancheni v'achar kavod tikacheni. All right, so what about the word ba'atzatecha? All right, so the bait is a prefix that can mean in or with, right? So we know that the cha at the end means your. So what does that leave us for a root word? All right, atzat, right? So the root word is actually etza, etza. Okay, so the word etza means advice or counsel. Okay, so ba'atzatecha. All right, so with or in your advice. You can use with as well. All right, what about tancheni? Okay, so our root word is what? No, but you're in the right area. You're missing a letter. Nacha. Nacha. Okay. So nacha. Nacha means to guide, to direct. Okay. So with your advice or with your counsel, you direct me. Okay. Well, you could say I am directed. That works as well. I'm like I said. The idea is that we are guided and directed by his counsel. All right, what about ve'achar? Okay, so we know that the wa is a prefix that means and. So what does achar mean? Achar means the hind end of something. So it's something that follows that which comes after. So the achar and afterward, because we're talking about he's being directed by the counsel of Yahweh, right? By his advice. All right. So first of all, he's directed with the advice, and afterward, what about kavod? All right, so glory. But glory is not on its own. Glory belongs to somebody. Your glory. It's not his. It's not kavodi, right? It's not my glory. So it's your glory. Okay. And your glory. What about tikacheni? Okay, it's mine. It has been conjugated. I'm going to let you know that. It's been conjugated. So this letter replaced another one. The tav at the beginning replaced another letter. That letter is the letter lamed. Okay. So lamed kuf chet. Lakach. No, lakach. Lakach. Replace the Q with a K. It's simple. Lakach. All right. So lakach. So the word lakach means to carry, or to carry away, or to accept. Okay. So this tav is where? Putting it in the future. It's at the beginning of the word. Tav is always, this tav is telling us that it's something that has yet to happen. It will. Because the kavod doesn't have a gender. Okay. It will what? Carry me, accept me. King James says, receive me. So I guess what the best way to do this would be will direct me. Let's do it that way. That makes more sense. All right. So your advice will direct me, and afterward, your glory will what? Will receive me, right? Will accept me. All right. So what we have here is Psalm 73 and 24. King James says, you shall guide me with your counsel. So we have here, with your advice, you will direct me. Same thing, right? All right. And afterward, your glory will receive me. King James says, and afterward, receive me to glory. So the same thing. Same thing. 73 and 24. Mm-hmm. All right. I did. Sorry for causing confusion on this word here, because I could tell it was causing the way that I was processing it wasn't correct. Okay. Because we got the tav again, it's at the beginning, so it's going to be future tense. Remember, if it's at the beginning, it's future. If it's at the end or close to the end, it's in the past. Okay. So right here, we've got it, like I said, it's at the beginning. So it's going to do something. All right. Here, it's going to do something. That pattern follows throughout the whole sentence. Okay. Yeah, it does. Again, the setup of the grammar is different, so it can be difficult for us sometimes. All right, so let's take a look at our paleo word. We have what letter here? The letter yud, right? What's our second letter? Resh. And what's our last letter here? That's a hey. So we got to put some vowels so we can pronounce this thing. So let's put some A's in there. So we have the word yada. Yada. So what does yada mean? Well, in our Parsha today, what was the Father doing with all of these things that we saw today? What was he doing to the Israelites with all of these things. He was, well, they weren't going to stay in this one spot forever. So they were going to be sent other places, and they would need to know what to do and what was acceptable and what was not acceptable in the other places that they got sent to, right? So what do we call that? Nope. You're close. He was teaching them. Okay? So the word yara, it means to teach. Okay? You have the word lamad, which means the same type of thing. Okay? But yara, the difference here with yara is that it's like if you had a bucket of water and you had, and you poured it on top of mom. If you had a bucket of water and you had a set of stairs and you poured that water on the top stair, what's going to happen? It's going to flow down from stair to stair to stair until it hits the bottom, right? Yeah. All right. Well, the idea for yara is the same. That teaching, when it's done correctly, it flows like water. There's not a whole lot of steps. There's not a whole lot of bumps in the road. There's not a lot of hurdles, right? Because you have the teacher who is imparting the knowledge, but you also have the students who are wanting to learn. Because I guarantee you, you see it with kids, you see it with animals. If somebody doesn't want to learn something, they won't, right? Now, lamad, the difference there is lamad denotes that there's teaching being done, but there's also a rod of correction that if you don't get it, you're going to get a whooping. This is the act of teaching itself, okay? So when you teach, and like I said, you have a teacher, an instructor who is willing to teach, but then you also have students who are willing to listen and willing to learn. Okay? And we all have the ability to teach something. All right? Whatever we do, we can teach someone how to bake a cake, right? Or you can teach someone how to mix concrete, or you can teach people all kinds of things if they want to learn them. All right. So let's take a look at these letters. With the yud, what do we have here? We've got the fist, right? When we talk about the fist, we talk about power. Okay. So then when we have this resh, and that makes a lot of sense. Applied power makes a lot of sense in this case. When we have the resh, what are we talking about? Something that is lifted up or elevated, right? And then when we talk about the hay, what do we have here? We've got the spirit, right? We've got the ruah. All right. So when we teach, again, we all have the ability to teach somebody something, whether for good or for bad. We have the ability to teach a person. All right. By that same token, we have the ability to lift up and what else? To tear down, right? They say that with the prophets, they were to build up and to tear down. They'd tear down first and then build it. But the point is, they had that ability, and we have that ability as well. All right. And we've seen it like when we have visitors come and something particular grabs a hold of them. And you can tell because you see the light come on in their eyes, right? We've seen that before in people. Not like literally a light come on. You see the recognition. And, your teacher should pick up on that. But when we see people do that, when we see them recognize something, a pattern or a precept or you fill in the blank. When we teach others the way of Yahweh, which is what Moses was doing, right? He was teaching Aaron. He was teaching not only all of Israel, but he was also teaching Aaron and his sons, hey, this is what Yahweh wants you to do. And we already spoke about it earlier. Had they not done those sacrifices or whatever, according to the way that the Father wanted them, would he have accepted them? No. So they had to accept that teaching, because what happened with Nadab and Abihu? They didn't accept it. They did what they wanted. We saw what happened there, right? So, and that was another thing. I wrote that actually in my Parsha, or in my stuff earlier, but I just kind of glossed over it. It was amazing to me that it burnt them up, right? But it didn't touch their clothes. It said that they picked up their coats. They picked them up in their coats and carried them out. Yeah, it didn't affect their clothing. Yeah, exactly. Just like the 3 Hebrew boys, right? Said that there wasn't even the smell of smoke on their clothes when they came out. All right. And it's kind of like also, when they were out in the desert, they were out there for 40 years, but their shoes didn't break. And, their clothes actually kind of grew and shrunk with them, and their shoes did the same thing. Yeah. So again, when we teach others his ways, we have the power to elevate their spirit, bring them up from one place to another. Okay? But when it all comes down to it, especially with this word yara, especially with the word yara, the student has got to be willing to listen. You've got to be willing. You can, that old mule sits down on his rear end out there in the field. You can try to move him. And when is he going to move? When he's ready to, not when you want him to. All right? So that's the thing. In order for them to receive the gift of being moved from one place to another, they have to be willing to accept the information that they're given, willing to be taught. Can't be stubborn, can't be obstinate, right? Can't be meddling, right? So, like I said, it's nice. Sometimes when you ask yourself, well, why do we have X amount of words for this one meaning? Well, it's because there are different facets to those things. Like I said, this denotes a person, or this denotes a teaching that's flowing from place to place, whereas the other, it's denoting that there's a form of correction there. Yeah. Well, if you don't listen, like in the old days, right? When you were doing your lessons at school, and they would, if you cutting up or you didn't, what'd they do? They whack you with a ruler or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Now, you can't do that today because they shut the school down. But my point is, that's kind of hey, you need to snap out of it. Pay attention. Quit jerking around, and let's learn the lesson. Let's learn the subject. You should have been acting up. Yeah, you. That's what I'm saying. You shouldn't be. If you hadn't been acting up, you wouldn't have got that paddle, right? That's my point. So, and the Father's like that too. He would much rather us listen and be teachable than for us to have to come back and beg for forgiveness, right? Kind of like what we saw in the message today, right? It's like what Samuel told Saul. You've done the right thing. Now you ain't going to be king no more because you didn't listen. Saul's like, well, the people were getting upset. Hey, who cares? All right. Yeah, you're the king. You make the rules, right? If he didn't have his head in a bowling bag, but so like I said, that's the difference between yara and lamad. Same word, means the same thing. It's just the method in which the teaching is administered and the way that it's accepted. So anyway, that's going to do it. I know it's kind of short, but we're going to be done with that. So anyway, we love you, appreciate you.